Well, let's discuss this further now with Douglas Sloan, who's a political analyst. He's also the vice president for the Washington, D.C. NAACP, a civil rights organization. He's joining us via Skype. Thank you very much for being with us, Mr. Sloan. So, your thoughts. What if the Capitol Hill rioters were black?
Well, if the Capitol Hill rioters were all black, perhaps they would have made it to the outside perimeter. Maybe even perhaps they'd have made it up to the door, but I assure you that they would have been violently suppressed upon trying to enter the Capitol building. We've seen evidence of this throughout this country, throughout this nation, during peaceful Black Lives Matter protests, where sometimes they're just walking down the street and they are violently attacked by police. We saw the National Guard in full army riot gear. I mean, gear like they were getting ready to be deployed to the Middle East. When we had the Black Lives Matter marches over the summer, we saw them guarding the Lincoln Memorial and other monuments because they anticipated violence. And none of that was the case. None of that happened.
So how do you explain this difference in treatment?
Well, obviously, it's because of skin color. This is a racial issue. We're seeing white privilege at work here. There's no way in the world that if these insurrectionists were black, or if these insurrectionists were brown, as in Muslim or say Hispanic, that they would have been able to storm the Capitol and get through those gates unabated. There's no way in the world that they would have been allowed entry into the U.S. Capitol. Right. There's no way in the world that there would have only been one shooting or one fatality. And by the way, a lot of people aren't paying attention to this. A Capitol police officer was killed when he was hit in the head with a fire extinguisher from these violent right-wing white extremists that laid siege to the U.S. Capitol.
Some have said that the actions displayed yesterday only further the argument for defunding the police, which was a rallying cry, of course, during the BLM protests, the Black Lives Matter protests. But will that be enough to deal with the issue of inequitable policing?
Well, a lot of people misunderstand the rallying cry or slogan, defund the police. When Black Lives Matter uses defund the police, they are saying that they want to take some of the funding used for policing and put those towards other services that would be better served helping underserved communities like social services, like domestic violence, like services towards the economy and jobs, because we know that economic circumstances and poverty are drivers of crime. When they say defund the police, they're not just saying abolish the police or take all the money out of the police department, but rather reallocate some of those resources to get at some of the root causes of crime and other issues that plague some of these inner city. And it's not just black communities, but also white communities that are out in like West Virginia, Kentucky, and Arkansas, where they have high incidences of crime within poor communities. Another thing regarding, very quickly, regarding, you can't defund the Capitol Hill police, or rather Capitol Police, because they come under the U.S. Capitol and Congress. So they have money set aside, and it's not a regular police force. So that force could never be defunded for various reasons.
Let me just widen this out a little bit. Before we go, I want to ask you about, obviously everyone is saying President Trump is to blame for the most recent events. But you and I know that this is not just down to President Trump, and changing the president is not going to be enough. We've had a black president in America, Barack Obama, and the issue wasn't necessarily addressed under him. So what needs to happen, you think? And do you think Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are the ones who can perhaps tackle this issue better than it has been tackled in the past?
Well, a lot of people expected Barack Obama to wave a magic wand when he got in office and make all racism and systematic oppression and institutionalized racism disappear in this country. And being that this country, in a sense, was founded on that type of oppression, from the genocide of the Native Americans to the racism and oppression of African people they vowed over that they made slaves in this country. And then, after slavery ended, it's not like we flew a party and everything was okay. No, we had Jim Crow, we had failed Reconstruction, we had hundreds of years of institutionalized racism within the institutions in this country. So it's going to take more than one president to fix that deep-seated racism and systematic oppression that is present within the institutions of this country. So Barack Obama did a lot with programs like My Brother's Keeper, like the consent decrees that he has with the police department, with ensuring that different departments like Department of Labor and Education aggressively pursue incidents of racism within their ranks. But it's going to take more than one president, or even one president, 2 terms, to do that. It's going to take a concerted, continual, consistent effort to address incidents of racism within our institutions and within the police department. A lot of people don't understand that the police department grew out of the slave patrols in the 1800s, where they were chasing down slaves and sometimes brutally killing them or taking them back to the plantations. That's where that actual badge that they wore, I think that 5-pointed star badge, comes from the slave patrols. So a lot of this is really baked into our system, and we have a horrendous record of racism and racist behavior among our police forces in this country. So it's going to take more than just one president to address.
Right. As you say, an issue that's going to take a long time to resolve. Thank you so very much for speaking to us, Douglas Sloan, in Washington, D.C. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.